I don't want to waste your time any more than you bargained for by choosing to click on this video. I'm going to tell you everything I believe up front and then expand upon that in the following sections of the video with timestamps. I'm going to give an overview of the lawsuit as it is right now with likely outcomes given the precedents that have been set in the preliminary hearings, if you'd like to stick around for that. Yeah, I know there are people who feel unsure about me developing my thoughts in subsequent videos like this. I mean what I say when I say that I don't hold my own opinions in very high regards. I try to be well researched and reasonable about what I think, but I truly do mean I'm always willing to have my mind changed on things. Making subsequent videos with updated thoughts and discussions is a product of that. I think it's personally very foolish to have concrete, unchanging ideas about anything. But that being said, I don't make these videos to change your mind on anything. These are just my updated thoughts in the spirit of discussing all of this sincerely. So, all of that being said, here's what I think right now. I am still in defense of NJZ, but ahead of the primary lawsuit hearing, I'm also trying to be very realistic about what is going on legally. Of the people who brought reasonable and rational points of argument to my last video, this one was very clear and understandable. It's not a bad thing to start being a little more realistic about where the preliminary hearing decisions may take us for the main lawsuit next month. The courts have decided with high bador in every single case so far. NJZ and team have no points in this game to date. I know, I am very well aware that it is incredibly unlikely at this moment in time that NJZ will prevail legally. That does not and will never change the fact that the members feel hurt and betrayed by what's happened. I support them by the principle of advocating for themselves. They have every right to do so, and yet I do not disagree that this has been handled very recklessly. So reckless and without much serviceable evidence to the point that we are here right now. The legal system has not been on their side, and in trying to apply nuance to everything here, the odds of them prevailing in this look incredibly bleak unless there is some evidential breakthrough that everybody has been missing up until this point. No, I understand what we're looking at is likely NJZ returning to a door under contract until it's been fulfilled and or very massive penalties that are imposed upon the members. Even if NJZ wins and the contract is declared void, the damage this has done to Hybe and especially Adore cannot be avoided. Adore has a very real argument separate from this to make about damages caused to the label and brand over everything that's happened. Heejin also makes this situation even more complex. She is the reason why this has happened. The members have based their need for independence from Adore largely with the understanding that they cannot do what they do without her. While the members seem to trust her very deeply, I have concerns based on her own past controversies. Separating my personal understanding of Heejin from the support I have for NJZ's case for independence is tricky. These two things are woven together quite tightly, but I don't believe it's impossible. I'll talk about that a little bit later. The intersection I arrive at is that there is emotional truth that is slamming against the unavoidable legal realities that are fast encroaching on the members and their case for independence. This is what I mean when I am always barking about nuance. Multiple things can be true at the same time. I mean that. It's a hard thing to deal with in a faction-based community like K-pop, but in my opinion is very necessary in even remotely trying to take these issues actually seriously. So, I am still in defense of NJZ, and what continues to be, I guess, my most radical opinion on all of this, I am not willing to characterize the members as villains, manipulative, or even unreliable for choosing to do something about this. There is nowhere near enough substantial evidence to support this case. I can meet you there, but to build onto that and start to say that NJZ knows what they're doing, are being intentionally evasive, they're 100% only doing this for Heejin is speculation. The evidence we have today is unreliable. I do not disagree, but I cannot stress enough. We don't know these people. I don't blame anyone for not believing NJZ at this moment in time or deciding to wait for more information, but using what's available to us right now to characterize them as manipulative or evasive is a step too far, in my opinion. Not a single person in the K-pop community, myself included, could testify what we think about this in a court of law without getting torn to shreds by prosecution. As a third-party viewer, we have to speculate about most all of this. Admitting that and honoring that in discussion is not grifting, it's not being waffly, it is being rational about this. And so my updated thoughts, the motivating sentiment behind this super deluxe definitive edition, no matter what stance you take or who you decide to side with on whatever condition, we don't know these people. It is so unwise to characterize any party in this lawsuit as anything, but believing that both parties are earnest in their efforts with nuanced consideration is the solution I found that does the least amount of damage. This is what I think generally, so let's get into the case itself. The main lawsuit that determines everything for both sides has to do with whether or not breaches of trust are serious enough to null a contract. That is what the main lawsuit is about solely. It is the end-all be-all for both sides that will guarantee victory. Can this contract be upheld, or has there been a justifiable material breach of contract? This aspect of the lawsuit has not been directly addressed yet in a court setting, though the preliminary injunction gives us very clear hints about where it could be going. What we've witnessed up until this point are requests for independent activities in which NJZ has been denied every single time. That should tell us a little bit about the validity of Ador's contract itself. In March of this year, Ador won the preliminary injunction, barring NJZ from independent music activities and using the name NJZ officially without approval until the primary case concludes. The ruling was made out of consideration that doing this, promoting independently, would severely harm Ador as a label and brand. The following month, in April, NJZ and team filed objections and appeals to the ruling made at the preliminary injunction, to which it was again rejected. The court sided with Ador, and in fact, at the end of May, an additional ruling was made to the injunction that states NJZ would be fined 1 billion Korean won per member for any future violations of the ruling. In the middle of June, this month, an appeal to this was brought to the Seoul High Court, in which the lower court's ruling was upheld, once again siding with Ador. This is currently where we're at legally, and while the main lawsuit has yet to be heard, things look very murky for NJZ and team when considering how the court has ruled in Ador's favor every single time. Very importantly, these preliminary decisions reinforce that Ador's exclusive contract with the members is valid enough to be enforced for legal decisions like this. The main lawsuit coming up next month is going to be an uphill battle for NJZ and team, as there should have been more substantial evidence provided during this preliminary period to prove that Ador has materially breached the contract, enough for it to be invalid or at the very least questionable for an injunction hearing like this one. The legal momentum leading up to the main lawsuit heavily favors Ador, but even if a swift enough decision is made in favor of the label, appeals from NJZ and team are likely. They've said as much that they're going to pursue this issue as long as it takes. What we're looking at is probably years of legal battles to come, well beyond 2026. Ahead of the primary hearing, the most damning piece of evidence against Hybe Ador is the leaking of private data belonging to the members. Dispatch, a Korean media outlet, published a series of videos and records from the members' time as trainees. Practice videos, chat messages, and most notably, the members' medical records. Dispatch confirmed Hybe was the source of the messages being published. Hybe also confirmed as much, but as for who was responsible directly and where the other pieces of media came from is unclear at this moment in time. This leaking of private information may be pivotal to NJZ's case regarding a material breach of contract, but there are pretty substantial roadblocks up ahead. Hybe is the one who allegedly conducted this audit, not Ador, which is very significant to this case. NJZ and team will need these leaks to prove a material breach of Ador's contract, not Hybe. The preliminary hearings did not treat these leaks as substantial enough to negate the enforcement of Ador's contract, and so what is likely is that there is not a guarantee of protection of personal data in Ador's contract. Regardless, there appears to be a currently unknown, very high legal threshold to accept the leaks as permissible evidence, and even still, this will not win the case alone if it miraculously is accepted as evidence. Ador can make a solid argument that they were not the ones who leaked the materials, and Hybe was conducting a lawful audit and obtaining this information as a parent company. This makes placing contractual fault over these leaks on Ador pretty much next to impossible, which is exactly the thing that will be needed to make this a strong argument for contract termination. As it stands right now, these leaks are one of the strongest pieces of evidence NJZ and team have going for them, yet is already demonstrably not enough to null the contract by any means. Unless Ador's contract explicitly actually does guarantee a protection of personal data, there is unfortunately not a strong argument to be made here regarding the main lawsuit. This will have to be made into a separate lawsuit regarding tort claims. Looking ahead to the main lawsuit next month, it's likely to get even more complex and muddy from here on out. But all of this is what makes up the emotional versus legal intersection I was talking about. The leaks of private information to a media company are real and serious to the members. It has clearly caused them distress that all of this was leaked without their consent. NJZ's emotional argument about a lack of trust in both Ador and Hybe is strong, but yet the legal argument is flimsy. How do we reconcile with these two things? Supporting the members in their efforts for autonomy while also recognizing the legal system as not favoring them is not a bad thing, nor should it signal any kind of blind loyalty to either side of this dispute. It's fine to regret that any of this is happening, even that the members are going through with this against all odds and the outcome will likely end in some kind of ruin. I find it enough to empathize with the plight of NJZ as I see it, and unnecessary to villainize them in the midst of a legal dispute where both sides are inclined to neglect information that doesn't benefit their case. NJZ are not perfect victims, I can agree to that. I don't blame anyone for considering their actions in the wake of this as regrettable. And with that in mind, we move to Heejin, the central condition for this group's departure from Ador. Even in court, NJZ has framed Heejin's ousting as a foundational breach of trust. They argue that without her, Ador is not protecting their interests, inhibiting their creativity, and importantly, their personal welfare. This is an emotional argument that can be made, yet again, not a strong legal argument. NJZ says that Heejin made the trainee and idol experience a lot more tolerable than it was before they were moved from Source Music to Ador. Throughout 2024, every legal move the members made, the surprise livestream most especially, they emphasized that Heejin is irreplaceable to the NewJeans package, and they can't do this without her. Heejin was and is vital to their relationship with Adore as a company. Any leadership without her is unacceptable and untrustworthy. The court has already sided with Adore on this matter in the preliminary hearings. The contract does not guarantee Heejin's position as a part of any agreement. This is yet another emotional issue, not an incredibly sound legal argument. This is also just a very divisive topic to begin with. We have to take the members at their word, believe that they would choose to speak out together because they're genuinely concerned for their own well-being without Heejin. So supporting NJZ in many ways also means co-signing to their trust in Heejin as a leader, which is not easy. Heejin could have been a supportive figure in their work as idols, made them feel safe and comfortable, yet that doesn't excuse the quite awful behavior she has exhibited in the industry for the better part of 2 decades. I get that art is subjective, but the continuous placing of young idols in artistic settings inspired by explicit media is unacceptable. For this reason most especially, I'm not going to pledge loyalty to Heejin just because I can empathize with NJZ's want for independence. So again, how do we reconcile with this? Nuanced support is my answer here. I support NJZ by principle of their wishes for independence from Adore, yet also remain very critical of their decision to prop up Heejin as the only person in the industry who can save them. I'm sure there's a lot more to this understanding. I do believe the members at their word. I can imagine, especially now, where should Adore prevail in this lawsuit, an industry-wide blacklisting of the members seems very likely. The members are then faced with the question of who else they could possibly trust in the industry from that point out. I think most people do this nuanced support with K-pop groups to begin with, supporting the idols in their well-being while keeping a cautious eye on the people in power above them. There's room for corruption anywhere, as we very well know. Yet again, multiple things can be true at the same time. That is the bulk of what the main lawsuit is going to be about, and so, to go over the main arguments with a fine-tooth comb of nuance and considering the main ideas on both sides. Number 1, regarding contract validity. NJZ and team have an argument to make that the contract could be invalid over Adore and Hybe violating their trust emotionally. On the other hand, Adore and Hybe have an argument that contracts are legally binding, not emotionally binding. NJZ and team's reasons to void the contract are unreasonable and maybe even unlawful, regardless of any emotional distress caused to the members. When it comes to emotional versus legal arguments, the courts are legally bound to the text of a contract first and foremost, and so are naturally inclined to favor contract enforcement unless there is a very clear material violation. Number 2, regarding the leaks themselves as potential evidence for this trial. NJZ and team have an argument to make that Hybe allegedly leaked private information about the members, violating the privacy and breaking trust between them and the companies. The leaks have harmed them in several ways, both emotionally and with consideration of their image. On the other hand, Adore and Hybe have an argument to make that these leaks were disseminated legally, and it was even necessary to build a case for themselves. They can argue that this wasn't done so maliciously. Neither side denies the leaks happened, but their significance and how damaging they may have been to the members is what matters regarding the lawsuit. Both sides are inclined to favor aspects of the leaks that support their claims and dismiss or downplay aspects that don't favor them. And finally, I guess Heejin's role in all of this. I'm predicting this will not be important or substantial enough to the main lawsuit, but nevertheless, NJZ have an argument to make that Heejin protected their well-being, and her ousting destroyed what was a safe working environment for the members. Adore can't be trusted without her. On the other hand, the nature of Heejin's ousting was due to a separate issue from this lawsuit. If Hybe as the parent company can prove that they offered her reasonable roles within Adore after her departure, they can demonstrate a show of good faith. As ethically tough as the topic of Heejin is, both perspectives regarding her have merit to them, but Hybe Adore's is likely the one which will be favored legally. These are the main arguments for us as viewers as I see them, all points that will be legally skewed in the coming months and unfortunately maybe the coming years. There are truths to every side of the argument, but in a legal setting, not a single narrative presented by either side will fully capture the absolute truth and reality of what happened because of legal, emotional, and simply just strategic reasons in the interest of winning a case. All of this hopefully develops the extent of a more nuanced, ultra deluxe remix definitive special edition of my defense of NJZ, the emotional and ethical versus legal arguments, which do not run parallel to each other at this moment in time. It will likely be a choice of one or the other in regards to how this ends in a legal sense, but choosing to honor and consider both sides, regardless of the outcome, is not a reprehensible thing to do as I see it. Believing NJZ at their word is the least damaging perspective I think I can take on this personally. I don't blame you for being unsure about this, apprehensive to take a side until more substantial evidence is provided. That by itself is not a problem by any means, though it takes a lot beyond that line of reasoning to characterize the members as malicious and villainous, which is where I have to kind of raise an eyebrow. Additionally, and I guess actually finally, what about Eyelet? In May of 2024, NJZ alleged that one of Islet's managers told the members of Islet to ignore Hani when they passed by each other in the Hive building. While Hani didn't mention the manager or group by name in the livestream, mentioning it in the first place is why it was eventually brought to court by Adore. CCTV footage presented by Adore showed that the Islet members bowed to Hani and Danielle in greeting, compromising but not directly refuting the claims of NJZ. The primary claim is that the members were verbally instructed to ignore Hani. Hani never stated that they didn't actually bow to her. In fact, the leaked messages after this show Hani telling Heejin that the members of Islet did bow to her in greeting. The original claim revolves around what the manager said after the members of Islet greeted Hani, which is not clear, as the security footage does not record audio. Heejin, while still under Adore, claimed that there was more footage capturing this issue that happened after the recorded scene that was played in court, but Hype explains that their security footage is deleted after a 30-day retention period. Which, by the way, this is not unique to Hype. A 30-day retention limit on security camera footage being deleted is very common practice. Hani also revealed in court that she wasn't sure what exactly was said, reducing the seriousness of this as an accusation of hostility. Once again, this claim as a piece of evidence was rendered weak due to appearing more emotional in nature rather than legal. This issue in particular is now reduced to gross speculation. Since the security cameras do not record audio, the original claim is near impossible to actually prove. It was a weak point of evidence to begin with, and as it turns out, was very damaging to Islet as people. The mentioning of additional but now deleted security camera footage opens up the room to speculate that maybe Islet had obeyed the manager's alleged command at a different time. So, how to deal with this? Islet has clearly suffered from being forcibly involved in all of this. The core of this issue, as was brought up in court, is about workplace hostility. This greeting situation happened during growing tensions over Heejin's ousting and her outcry over Islet's concept. As they say themselves, the members of NJZ were in some kind of distress in an already tense environment at Hybe. NJZ had a right to claim they felt mistreated and unsupported by Hybe during this time, as relations between Adore and Hybe were beginning to fall apart. And as for whether or not the manager gave a hostile verbal command, NJZ and team claim to have mentioned this happening in the first place to demonstrate a pattern of mistreatment as a part of a larger legal claim. The same thing can be said in defense of Islet. They were also very likely under some distress amid tensions between the companies, unsure of what to do or how to respond, and have been unfairly characterized as rude for not bowing to their seniors when the security camera footage provided disproves that claim very clearly. The core of this problem revolves around Hani sincerely believing something hostile was said, and the public, primarily K-pop fans, unfairly placing the blame for this on the behavior of Islet when their behavior and actions do not seem to be the core of the claim to begin with. In retrospect, it was unwise to discuss this issue publicly. Mentioning it as a part of their interest to conduct a lawsuit is what ultimately led to Islet getting mentioned by name in court. Once again though, multiple things can be true at the same time, especially during a lawsuit. Hani may have felt genuinely hurt and overwhelmed, misinterpreting a situation under stress. Islet did bow to them, and the manager may have not said anything hostile, or even if they did say something hostile, Islet didn't act upon it. That much is provable. The blame for any of this should not have been placed on the members of Islet to begin with, which touches on a much bigger problem. How do we even begin to reconcile with how much public narrative shaped this issue? Is it Hani's fault for bringing this up? While she didn't mention them by name herself, signaling this issue as part of their request to reinstate Heejin ultimately caused Adore to request for the footage to defend themselves. I don't blame you if your answer to this is yes, if you think she needs to be held accountable for effectively being a catalyst that led to the public using this situation to attack Islet, but I have to contest out of empathy and consideration. Both sides in this issue, including even the manager, may have acted from a place of confusion and or stress about what was happening between Hybe and Adore at the time, not malice. The court's dismissal of this as evidence doesn't negate the emotional reality of what happened, and I have to agree, the court rightly focused on provable harm. Once again, we arrive at this intersection, the emotional versus legal arguments. So, to take us to the end, the legal argument, appearing as though it will prevail in this lawsuit by a landslide, does not diminish my understanding of this issue from an emotional perspective. It is as simple as that for me, despite how complex this dispute is and will grow to be even more so in the months and likely years to come. I do regret this happened, acknowledge very much the signs that point us towards a likely legal-focused outcome, but I am hesitant to encourage the members to simply just give up against all odds. I don't have an interest and I don't see a value in invalidating their concerns about safety and protection. I can't possibly claim to know what it's like for them or what has been offered to them under Hybe. It takes a lot for me to deny that they are being earnest in their efforts, and as I said before, I would much rather be wrong about this on the other side of this lawsuit, having believed them at their word, rather than going out of my way to characterize them as malicious for deciding to do something about this. And so, I am still in defense of NJZ. Thank you so much for watching this if you did. I sincerely thank and appreciate you for hearing me out. I hope you'll let me know what you think about this.